that's a very interesting question. So one question we can think about here is, does this just happen? Does the data just emerge, or do we give it input? Do we make it happen? Is the evolution organic or is it artificial? For example, with news, you have this question all the time. You have fake news, and some people push a message and say, this is an incredible story about Trump's airplane crashing or something, and it's fake news. It didn't actually happen, but everybody wants to hear that story, and so they're like, ooh, I want to hear that, and they jump in and replicate the story. And they listen to it and post it again. And so that's sort of an organic way in which rumors spread or fake news spreads. But there's also an artificial way where you write a robot, a chat bot or a tweet bot that sends messages out automatically. And so that's an artificial way of changing the way things go. Or for example, you have a lawn and the grass grows. That's the organic way. But then you say, okay, I'm going to cut the grass now. That's an artificial influence that changes everything. And so when we have these things sort of running into each other over time, that's what they do on their own. But then I can always come in and say, okay, I'm going to change it now by putting a different pattern in. Maybe like this. I can say, now I want dots to pop up. And there they go. And of course, they're a massive change. And but now they're sort of doing their own thing, and I stopped influencing them. So it's all a question of what happens on its own, and when do we intervene, and how are those interventions affecting the whole? And that, of course, metaphorically has a lot to do with how we are stewards of the world. Are we taking good care of the world we live in? Are we taking good care of our friends? Are we taking good care of our families? Are we taking good care of our resources? Are we stewards or are we exploiters? Are we people who want to just draw as much energy and things out of the world, or are we actually people who take care of things? And so that question of artificial versus organic influences, to me, has to do with whether we are good at taking care of things or just good at exploiting them. So sometimes I look at this and I decide, okay, now it's getting boring, I have to change it, I have to do something else. And that's my impatience maybe, and my desire to take action in the world. And it comes out of a need to see something different happen. But then sometimes you can also sit back patiently and see, oh, now we're looking at what it's doing, and it's just doing its own thing, and it's kind of interesting and beautiful. And it's just like real life. When we stand in the world and live our lives, sometimes we just go along with what happens, and then sometimes we say, no, now things have to change and go differently. Sometimes time carries us, and sometimes we have to carry time. So we decide to take decisive actions and take turns to the left or do things differently. And those are dramatic moments, and sometimes those are the right things to do, and sometimes they're the wrong things to do. There's no guarantees. But this is definitely a metaphor of participating, observing patiently, and then taking action. One category of art in digital art is generative art, which means that you start the process and then it just runs on its own. And so it keeps generating new images. So right now we're in the generative mode where live code is actually generating new data. And for exhibits like this one, we had to render the generative art into a fixed state. So it becomes like a movie, and we say now we're just playing it back. And this is because it's in a 360 projection, and we don't have the capability of calculating the images on the fly because they're too big. But here for the small screen, we can calculate the images on the fly, and everything that you see happens in real time. And so it becomes possible to leave it in its generative state. So we don't have to make a movie of it. We could record it and play it back later. And that's just a different mode. It's like, the question is, Are we looping something, or are we letting it emerge? Are we letting it evolve, or are we preserving it? Getting a little crazy there. So, Supraliminal runs on a schedule, and the schedule goes from very simple forms to very complex forms. The idea is really to get from a binary of black and white to a very colorful world, and ultimately to a noise pattern, which is resembling the stars in the sky. And the whole point of the project is that we can get to the stars in the sky from very simple forms. And this is not only metaphorically a nice story, but it's also true that the most complex forms in the world actually result from very simple shapes interacting with each other. And so we demonstrated that by starting with a black and a white panel that run into each other, producing a gray panel at the edge. And then it's almost like each collision generates a new kind of event. So when the black and white collide, they produce gray. When the gray and white collide, they produce colors. And then we go from the basic colors red, gold, and black, the colors of the German flag. They're not static, they animate into each other. They produce more colors, and the colors eventually produce waves. And the waves eventually produce little dots all over the place. And those dots starting to look like the stars. And then we fade out into a black sky, and we start all over again. So it's a cycle of building up something complex, reducing it to noise, and making it supraliminal, too big to perceive, and then going back to the basics again. To create supraliminal, we use several coding environments. One is processing, the other one is Max MSP. Processing does the graphics, and Max MSP does the sound. The sound is a complex surround sound that goes over 8 channels of speakers, and the graphics are on a very large image that ends up being 10,000 by 1,000 pixels. So it's a huge image that wraps around, and basically we sit down and write the code, see what results we get, and then write it again. It's a very iterative process. And with the music as well, we try out many different things until we find something that surprises us. And sometimes you write code and you get exactly what you want, and that's fine. But sometimes you write code and you get something you didn't expect. You're like, whoa, why is it doing this? And that feeling of surprise, why is it doing this? And it's doing that. That's when we know we have something going that is beautiful and compelling. And then as artists, we just need to get out of the way of it and let it happen and say, okay, well, there it's doing its thing, and let go of it and let it be its own thing. And so that's the most exciting moment in the creative process. And you could do this in any different medium. You could do it with a pen and paper. You could do it with some crazy binary code or something. But the thing you're always looking for is when it becomes alive in a way that it surprises you and does more than you think it would do. We actually start with black and white, which is a big topic in the United States because of the history of slavery and complex race relations to this day. Questions of other oppression, liberation, and going beyond all these categories to a real conviviality. We're looking for new convivialities there. And then we went from there to the flag. Since the project had its world premiere in Germany, we figured black, red, and gold is an interesting thing to work with, because Germany also had its many questions about what forms of conviviality work best. And Germany has a rich history and learned a lot of lessons from its history, and is very engaged in a democratic process of figuring out what works best for everybody else, and what works best for people, including people who arrived recently, refugees, including people who have been here for a long time, who are residents. So how do we adjust all this? And really, for us, it's a question of constantly asking the question, how do things fit together now? What happens when you put A and B together? You get a different kind of thing. You get a C. What is that C like? What happens if you have a thesis and an antithesis? If you combine them, you create a synthesis, which is different from what anybody else came in with, what anybody else expected, but there it is, and it's real. And so that being open to that process is one of the key messages of our project here, of Supraliminal, I think. Our key concern is to talk about accepting outcomes that you didn't expect, but they're nevertheless real. Sometimes we have these ideas of how things should be, and they're very fixed, and we have these realities that are very different and very dynamic, and so the fixed ideas and the dynamic realities collide, and we sometimes have to let go of our fixed ideas in order to perceive what's really happening, in order to be able to take action in the world again. The viewer. So ideally, in many data artworks or digital artworks, there's an interaction going on, so that the viewer has some kind of input and can influence things. And so in this version, I am both the player and the viewer, and so as you can see, I can introduce new elements here, and just by tapping my keys and stop everything, start everything, do new things. And so as a participant here and a creator, I'm both an observer and a influencer. And in the museum exhibit, in this one, it's static. The viewer is supposed to come in and interact with the image and feel overwhelmed by the image at times, or charmed at other times, and relieved and peaceful at other times. So we're thinking about an experience, emotional experience, and we're thinking about how a viewer comes in and experiences different states of complexity, and some feel good and some feel bad, and we're interested in that whole range of feelings. So also the music, the saxophone, is supposed to be surprising at times, charming at other times, and overwhelming at other times as well. So we're interested in all those feelings, and so the viewer is invited to participate in a whole set of new feelings. And ideally, if we do our job well in media art, we can make it so that people feel things they've never felt before. And that would be true cultural innovation. And that's what we're after. If we rely on text to convey the meaning of the piece, we failed as artists. The piece needs to be inspiring and generative on its own. And I would rather see people come up with completely different interpretations of the work that they own, than telling them what they should be feeling or thinking. So, of course, as an artist, I have my hopes and ideas for what I want to convey, but really I'm creating a field of possibilities. And that field of possibilities is open to interpretation by others. One of the key things about art is that it's polysemic. It means many different things to many different people. And you don't have to be right or wrong. So if you look at this and you say, I see a cow grazing in the fields, that's fine. And if you look at this and say, I see a racetrack with lots of people cheering on as the horses run by, that's fine too. Or if you say, I just see a bunch of trains coming in and out, that's fine too. Nobody's wrong and nobody's right, but everybody has a right to interpret the work and speak about it. And the conviviality that comes out of that exchange of ideas and perceptions is very important. Versus if you have, I don't know, something like a calendar and you say, okay, I mean Tuesday or Thursday the 4th of July or whatever this is, then we shouldn't have wild ranges of interpretations about that. We should be like, yes, we mean this day and this time. But in this case, with art, the whole point is that we have open interpretations and that we can exchange ideas freely. So there's liberty there, and there's a large field of possibilities in which everybody's welcome to come play. Well, supraliminal means more than you can perceive, and so it fits that it would be in a 360-degree scenario where you can only see a part at a time, and you know at the periphery of your vision, you know that there's other things going on, and you can turn your gaze and choose what to look at, but whenever you choose to look at one thing, you miss everything else. And that is called the cost of opportunity. Opportunity cost means you can only pay attention to one thing. And that means you miss certain other things. Now the challenge in life is to pay attention to the most important thing and not get distracted. And so in a playful way, we can talk about the choices we make and what we commit to as people looking at one thing and not as another in supraliminal. It's a playful framework for exploring the choices we make. And of course, in supraliminal, it doesn't really matter if you miss something because you can always stay longer and there's loops, and it's just art, so it's for fun and it's for aesthetics and it's for inspiration. But in real life, if you miss something, it's gone. You missed it, and it never comes back. So it's important to accept that you sometimes miss things, and it's also important to sharpen your senses so that you perceive the things that are the most important. And really, in an absolute sense, we don't know what is most important, but we can always try. And we can enjoy the feeling of having seized the moment properly, and we have to also accept when we miss the moment. The Greeks have this concept of chronos versus kairos. Chronos is the time, the public time, the time everybody has to suffer in or live through, and it's the cosmic time that everything happens in. And kairos is the right moment to do something. So it's time versus moment. And while we can't change time, we can change moment. We can see this is the right moment to do something. And when we are right, it works out beautifully. When we're wrong, it's tragic. So that's a really good articulation of how we place ourselves in the larger continuum of time. So how does the sound and the image work together? When we produce an event like this and we have various curves interacting with each other, we have moments of collision, and those moments of collision, Paul and I decided should have a sound event. So every time something like this happens, we want a new sound to come out. But there's also continuous sound that Paul designed, and it was the sound of a saxophone playing notes that are related to the Fibonacci series of numbers. The Fibonacci series of numbers goes like this: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so forth. And it describes a growth pattern, the growth pattern of a spiral. It's very frequently seen in nature. And all these curves are actually Fibonacci-related curves. So you have a sine wave with 2, and here a sine wave with 8 peaks, and those are all Fibonacci numbers. And so the music and the image are thematically related, but they're also technically related in that we sync them up very precisely. So there's one protocol here that we created to sync up the sound, and it looks something like this. This is a simple spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. I'm a data artist, so I'm excited if the various types of data come together, and there's lots of it, and we can scroll around and sort it in various ways. But here, there's an event schedule that says at this frame, these kinds of things happen, and we need these kinds of sounds to come as well. And so a sound engineer, Jeff Lubau, put these sounds together in Max MSP and synthesized them for a surround sound experience. So in the surround sound experience, there is another effect, which is that as the waves move, each wave has rhythm, and like bum, 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 but it moves along with the edge, bum, 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 like this, bum, 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 bum. And there's another one, it was going like this, maybe boom, 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 boom. And then you get all these kinds of rhythms overlaying, and on top of that we have the whole saxophone. So the saxophone is a thematic sound element, and the rhythms and clicks when the collisions happen are a synchronized sound element. So we have the synchronized sounds at one end and the thematic sounds on the other. And the thematic sounds of the saxophone give the whole project a certain kind of warmth, because the saxophone has a texture and a timbre and almost like a human voice. And the other ones are more technical and more synthetically derived. And so there's a tension there between the human and the technical as well, which always comes up in media art. Supraliminal has its world premiere at ZKM because ZKM is the world's best museum for new media. Why? Because they have the time and the resources and the skills to really deal with the material of new media. The material of new media is code, is programming and data. And when we produced the piece, I was actually in California and Paul was in New York, and we had our collaborator here, Bernd Linderman, and he was receiving images from us, and the images were very large. They were 11 megabytes, and we sent him like 10,000 images of 11 megabytes. It took almost a day to download, and we're like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. We have to make this a little faster. And so we said, instead of sending the pictures, we just sent the code. So we, copied the code out and highlighted, sent it over to him in an email or something, and he compiled it here and ran it here and said, yes, it's good, but there's an error in line 35. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll fix it right away. But I think this is the only museum that would email you back and say, there's an error somewhere in your code, and they could actually catch it and fix it or tell us to fix it. And so it's truly a visionary museum because its DNA is digital. They never had any other idea of works being not digital. And they're actually a research institution, and they all know the material that they're working with inside out. And so it's a very professional and powerful experience. And that means that the project can also continue growing here over time. So we have 2 more projects coming up. One is a app that we develop where people can play this kind of thing and do more physical sound synthesis and physical image synthesis on their iPhones. So that'll be new. Hasn't been done before, especially the combination of physical sound and physical image synthesis. So then we also have a conference coming up in January at ZKM where we talk about the relationship of physics and art, and dive deeper into the whole question of Turing equations and whether these wave equations truly describe the world as we know it and generate the world as we know it, or if there's more to it, or where the research stands. So that combination between research and art is unique in the world. My future plans are to keep working on data visualizations and data art. And we have a lot of important questions to resolve and a lot of misinformation. And so I am trying to create environments where we can get the ground truth, where we can find out what really happens in a place. And so it's important that future works will be both vectors where data comes into the art and vectors where data goes out of the art. And so, for example, we are doing a website called landtalk.org, which is about people telling stories of land and weather and how it changed in the past 20 years. So we get conflicting reports from similar locations about how things changed because people have different perspectives on how things changed. And that kind of thing is very important. And we want to keep those different perspectives in the same site so that you can see how the different perspectives all are true in some way at the same time. And kind of like waves colliding, the fact that one perspective is different from another doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong, but they're both describing different aspects of a situation. And so we have a synthesis there that tells us about the complexity of the world as it is, and we want to affirm the complexity instead of reducing it into overly simplified binary polars. I want to share how exciting it is to see the world in waves, to imagine the world as something that's made up of all waves that interact with each other. And there's this beautiful poem called Green Sees Things in Waves. And in it, the main character named Green happens to be overwhelmed by waves. And sometimes there's too many waves and we get confused and lost. But sometimes we have too many categories and we shut things down too much into one thing or another. And the main point is that with this project, I hope we can speak of a worldview where more fluid poetry, more dynamics, and more openness to the waveness of the world is possible. So I hope that the world becomes more wavy as we talk about it in this way. Learn to code. It's very important that you own the media that you trust and rely on every day. So if you have your phone and you kind of use it every day, all the time, as a way to manage your relationship to reality, the world, you also need to learn how to code, because you need to understand the power of how to set things up, and the power of setting up a technical script and a set of rules that determine how things are going to go from there on. And you can do that by learning how to program. So learn that stuff, write that code. You can find more information about our work on our various websites, djspooky.com, gregniemeyer.com. We're all little brands of our own, I guess. And ZKM holds this project in its permanent collection, so you could probably download the code from ZKM and work on it on yourself. We also are on Twitter at Greg Niemeyer and at DJ Spooky, and so there's many places to see what we're up to next.